Hey, what's going on, guys? With Fortuna's launch, we got new set mods you can acquire from the VANDAL bounties. And in this video, I'm going to be going over each of the individual mods, whether or not I think they're useful, and then the set bonus and whether or not I think that's useful. And I'll also just be giving my general thoughts on these mods. And I debated whether or not to make this video so soon after Fortuna's launch for reasons I think you're going to find pretty obvious. But before we get into how they work, let's talk about where you can acquire them. Each of these set mods is available from the bounties in Fortuna, and on each bounty rotation, you'll either have Synth, Mecha, or Tek Mods. I'll list a chance for one of these mods to drop from bounties here. And as you can see, basically on the last rotation of each bounty, you're going to have a good chance of getting each of these mods. And for the 4th and 5th tier bounties, you'll get a chance for it to drop on stage 4 as well as the final stage, stage 5. And that's not including whether or not you get the bonus. But basically the only thing I want you to take away from this is that they're the rare rewards from doing the bounty system. And you can also get these set mods as a drop from the assassination target on one of the bounties. But that's going to be a little less consistent, so basically the bounties are the way to get these mods. Now as for the mods themselves, there are 3 different sets. The Tek for Kavats, which consists of Tek Assault, a pretty good mod that gives your Kavat a 60% chance to ignore lethal damage, basically just meaning that your Kavat can last longer in missions, because it has much less of a chance to die. Tek Collateral, that increases your crit damage while you're inside the marked zone, which I'll go into what that is in a second. Tek Enhance, that increases the duration of your Kavat's abilities, which is an excellent mod for Kavats, because it's going to increase the duration of like the Charm buff or the Adarza Kavat's crit buff, and both those buffs are something you should be looking for in your Kavat builds, making Tek Enhance an extremely good mod. And then Tek Gravity, which pulls all enemies to you within 15 meters. At least that's what the mod says. Now let's talk about the set bonus and what the marked zone actually is. So the marked zone just looks like this, and if you have all 4 of these mods equipped, your Kavat's going to mark a 12 meter zone every 15 seconds, which procs a lot, and it'll proc from where your Kavat is standing. Enemies that are inside the zone are going to take 200 damage a second, which is pretty garbage, although it does add a little bit of damage potential to your Kavat. And certainly on lower level targets, if you can get them to come inside the zone, it will kill them. I think the best example of this is on paused enemies inside the simulacrum. So as you can see here, if you can pause the enemy AI and then get the Kavat to stand next to the enemies until it procs the marked area, you'll be able to deal some respectable damage to enemies, assuming they don't have too much armor. So against the new Corpus enemies on VANDAL, this is going to be better than against Grenier units with armor. And while we're talking about the marked zone, let's go over which of these mods is affected by the marked zone. The most obvious mod is Tek Collateral. And what this does is that while you're inside the marked zone, it's going to double your weapon's base crit damage multiplier. It's not going to double your modded crit damage, it's going to double your base crit damage. So for example, if I was standing in the zone with a RUBICO Prime, right? I have a 3 crit damage multiplier. I then get a 6 crit damage multiplier because it just adds an additional 3. If I were to then add Vital Sense to pump up my crit damage to 6.6, I would still only get the additional 3. So it would go to a 9.6 crit damage multiplier. I just want to make it very clear that the mod does not double your total crit damage multiplier. It only doubles the base crit damage. And then that base crit damage is added on top of your modded crit damage. So it's not multiplicative whatsoever. Or at the very least, it's not multiplicative with anything that I tested it with. But basically all you need to know is that this mod does give you extra crit damage. It just doesn't really tell you how it does it. Because why would you want to understand how the mod works? Next up in the same vein, we have Tek Gravity. Now you might say, wait, Tek Gravity doesn't say anything about the marked zone, and you're absolutely right. It says literally nothing about the marked zone besides the bonus. But here's a fun fact. Tek Gravity only works when you're inside the marked zone. This means that while you're outside the marked zone, Tek Gravity is 100% a dead mod, other than the fact that it will increase your set bonus. But if you want Tek Gravity to actually pull enemies into you, you need to be inside of the marked zone for it to happen. So make sure when you're slam attacking, you're only doing it inside the marked zone for Tek Gravity to work. As for the other 2 Tek mods, Tek Enhance and Tek Assault, they both seem to work the exact same way as they're worded. Both of them are excellent mods, and I would suggest putting them onto your Kavat if you have the capacity. Now let's move on to the Mecha Mods. The Mecha Mods consist of 4 different mods called Mecha Empowered, Mecha Overdrive, Mecha Pulse, and Mecha Recharge. These are the KUBROW set mods. And the set bonus for these mods works very similar to the Tek one. Your KUBROW is going to mark an enemy once every 15 seconds for 12 seconds. And if you kill a marked enemy affected by status, that enemy will then transfer its current status effects to all enemies within 30 meters, assuming you have all 4 mods equipped. If you don't have all 4, then this range is going to be less. Now it should be noted here that any damaging status effects won't carry over their damage, so it's only going to look like an effect like Slash or Toxin is on the enemy, but in reality they're not actually going to be taking damage from that status effect. although effects like the magnetic status effect as well as viral will carry over normally. So basically the set bonus here deals no damage, but carries over status effects normally. But that's enough about the set bonus. Let's look at the actual mods. So Mecha Pulse says that killing a marked enemy grants plus 60 armor for 20 seconds for each enemy within 30 meters. And I genuinely have no idea how this mod works. The only thing I can say for certain is that the armor buff is actually happening. But as for giving you plus 60% armor for each enemy within 30 meters when you kill a marked enemy, there's no way that's actually happening. I don't know what kind of math it's doing behind the scenes, but it's definitely not actually giving you 60 armor per enemy. It's more like somewhere between 20 to 40 armor per enemy, and it varies, which is why I don't understand how this works. But at the very least, it actually seems to be giving you armor, so that's something. The next Mecha Warframe mod is Mecha Empowered, and what this mod does is it gives you extra damage against marked enemies. Currently, this seems to be working as intended. It gives you a 2.5 times multiplier against enemies, although I'm not sure what happens when you stack multiple Mecha Empowers together. As for the last two Mecha mods, Mecha Recharge and Mecha Overdrive, they're pretty simple. Mecha Recharge gives your KUBROW extra shield recharge, and Mecha Overdrive gives your KUBROW status link and status duration. I have no real good way to test to see if this is working, but I'm just going to assume that it is, because overall, the status on your KUBROW is not going to matter that much. But honestly, who knows? If you're going to be equipping these two Mecha mods on your KUBROW, I really only suggest doing it simply to allow you to mark enemies more often with the set bonus. Because if you lose multiple mods on the set, the bonus is going to decrease from once every 15 seconds to once every 60 seconds. And because marking enemies can be pretty powerful, I'd probably suggest running both of these. But I'm also assuming that they're going to change how the status spread works, and that you're possibly using Mecha Empower to increase your damage on the single marked enemy. If you're not going to utilize the full set bonus, I probably would not run these. I mean, you can, they're just not anything special. And last but not least, let's look at the Synth Mods. The Synth Mods consist of Synth Charge, Synth Deconstruct, Synth Fiber, and Synth Reflex. The set bonus for these mods will reload your primary and your secondary weapons upon holstering, up to 20% of the magazine capacity every second if you have all four equipped. And I'll say with the Synth Mods, the set bonus is definitely the best part. Because while you're in a mission, you can use your magazine in your primary weapon, quickly swap to your secondary weapon, and then start using that. Because if you're using a weapon for more than 5 seconds with all 4 mods, it's going to reload 100% of your magazine. Now for me personally, I'm not a huge fan of Synth Reflex or Synth Charge, simply because with Synth Reflex, I'll typically want something else from my mod besides holster speed. Even though that does work well with the set bonus, because you're constantly changing weapons to reload the magazine, and Synth Charge, the 200% bonus on the final shot is really mediocre. Typically, you don't want to rely on the very last shot in your chamber dealing the most damage. You can put a different mod in here that will increase your damage on all the other shots, and not just that last shot, which you could possibly miss, or something else could happen where it just wouldn't be effective. So what really kills Synth Charge is the magazine capacity of 6, because if you could use it on a single shot weapon like the Nell, this would be an excellent mod. But since there's a magazine requirement, it's just kind of mediocre. You could use it, I guess, but it's not really going to increase your damage over the long term. And then finally, the two Synth mods that I actually find useful, Synth Fiber and Synth Deconstruct. Synth Fiber increases the armor of your Sentinel every time you're going to pick up a health orb by 100%, which is good for your Sentinel survival, and it works well with Synth Deconstruct that causes enemies dealt damage by your Sentinel to have a 25% chance to drop a health orb, which is quite good, and there's not that many ways in the game to actually drop health orbs on demand. So having it on the Synth Deconstruct is quite good, and it synergizes very well with Synth Fiber. And if you are going to be running Synth mods, I recommend running these two and maybe not the other two unless you really want to. But just having the two Sentinel mods and a 10% reload a second on your weapons is still really good, and I think you're going to find it quite useful. But that does it for this overview of the new set mods. Overall, I think the new set mods that go on your companions are far more useful than the ones that actually go on your warframes and weapons. And part of my issue with them is that the Kavat and the KUBROW set mods are just random. So you can like randomly have a circle somewhere, or you can randomly target an enemy. And because the two set bonuses don't really give the player any control, I find them difficult to recommend. Even the Mecha set bonus doesn't even seem to affect bosses, which is the only real case where you can control which target is alive. And don't even get me started on the mods not working as intended, or just being horribly misleading in their wording. I don't know if you guys could tell, but I got pretty frustrated while making this video because most of the mods I just could not test properly because they did not work as intended. And I think yesterday's patch actually stealth fixed Mecha Empowered because it was giving a 2.9 bonus like 2 days ago, and now it's a 2.5, which is the intended bonus. So maybe they'll just go through and quietly fix all these and not put them in the patch notes. But considering they're the rare rewards from bounties, and I was looking forward to getting my hands on and testing these, I was pretty disappointed overall. And if they go back and change and fix these, I'll probably make another video. but I just wanted to get this one out there because I was planning on doing it, and then when I got to it, it was just like insanely frustrating. So if you guys are planning on farming these mods, I might wait a little bit just to make sure that they're patched properly, or just pick up the ones that are innately good on their own. So like the 2 synth mods for Sentinels and the 2 Tek mods. Other than those, there's nothing I would really recommend getting your hands on immediately. But that's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you found it helpful, or at least enlightening into how mods work as soon as they're released. But that's it for me. Hope you're all having a good one, and I'll see you later.